Here are the main differences between a data analyst and a data scientist. Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Leon. I'm a data scientist based in the UK. And so I used to work as a data analyst, but then I transitioned over to a data scientist. And so I have a pretty good idea of what it's like working in both roles in the UK. There's quite a few things that I've noticed over the years of applying and working with others. One of them being that a lot of data analyst roles are often disguised as data scientist roles and vice versa. And a lot of people that I worked with don't actually understand the difference between a data analyst or a data scientist or any other data related role. So here are the timestamps, and in this video, I'm going to go over the main differences between a data analyst and a data scientist. Let's get right into it. So first, let's focus on the responsibilities for both of these roles. For a data analyst, you're focused on analyzing the current data and also identifying any possible trends. You'll also be spending a lot of time creating reports and dashboards, and also building and maintaining the pipelines that feed into these reports and dashboards. Data analysts are also focused more on answering questions that have an impact now rather than in the future. As for the data scientist, you're more focused on using the data to build and train statistical or machine learning models. You're also expected to create reports and dashboards, but I think that varies greatly depending on the type of data scientist that you are. You'll be building, automating, and maintaining the pipelines for modeling and predictions. And you might also do some A/B testing, which is basically a statistical way of testing out two things at the same time and then seeing which one works better. And then lastly, you'll be spending a lot of time cleaning structured and unstructured data, mainly because of the modeling requirements. In summary, I think a data analyst is more focused on making an impact now by reporting and analysis, whereas a data scientist is more focused on making predictions and doing things like A/B testing, which require more stats and technical knowledge. So now I'm going to compare the salaries between data analysts and data scientists. Now, I'm not going to look at entry-level salaries because I think long-term, mid to senior level salaries are going to be more important for your career. I'm also going to include London as another category because if you work there, there'll be a 5 to 10k difference compared to the national average. So the national average for a data analyst, according to Glassdoor, is £33,000, and on Indeed, it's £32,000. And if you work in London, Glassdoor says it's £37,000 and Indeed says £39,000. If you progress on to a senior data analyst, then the national average according to Glassdoor is £44,000 and Indeed says £42,000. But if you're a senior data analyst in London, then the average according to Glassdoor would be £48,000 and on Indeed £47,000. And now if we move on to data scientists, the national average according to Glassdoor is £47,000 and on Indeed it's £50,000. So compared to data analysts, already there's quite a big gap in salary. If you work as a data scientist in London, then Glassdoor says the average is £52,000 and Indeed says £59,000. So here's where I think it gets a little bit more interesting. If you are a senior data scientist, then the national average according to Glassdoor is £65,000 and on Indeed it's £59,000. If you're a senior data scientist in London, then according to Glassdoor it's £69,000 and on Indeed it's £68,000. If you're watching this and you're from the US, you might be wondering why are the salaries so low. Generally speaking, in the UK and the rest of Europe, that's just how it is. We do have other benefits, like we have a lot more holidays and we don't have to pay for health insurance and so on. Now, I definitely don't think you should pick a career based on the salary that it offers, but we do need money to survive, and it's fairly clear that in the long run, especially if you work in London, the earning potential is much higher for data scientists compared to data analysts. Now we're going to talk about the differences in qualifications needed to work as a data analyst versus a data scientist. For data analyst positions, from what I've seen, most of the time they require a bachelor's degree in some kind of STEM subject. And in some cases, a master's degree is required depending on the type of analyst position it is, but most cases, a bachelor's degree in some kind of STEM subject is enough. For data scientists, usually the minimum requirement is a master's degree, although you could compensate for that with a lot of experience. Some data scientist positions, usually research ones, do require a PhD. In these cases, you can't compensate with just experience alone anymore. So as you can see, data scientists usually have a higher entry requirement. It might be easier to work as a data analyst for a couple of years after you get your bachelor's degree and then transition over to a data scientist, because like I said, if you don't want to do a master's degree, you can sometimes compensate for that by having a lot of years of experience. Now, obviously, if you want to do research positions, etc., you can't really do that. You need to study and you need to do it the academic way and get a PhD. But in terms of most data scientist positions, it's usually possible to move from an analyst to a data scientist. So now I'm going to talk about the skills needed for data analysts compared to data scientists. So starting with data analysts, they need to know how to use SQL because there's usually a data warehouse where they can query the data, or they might have to use SQL to create views in the warehouse that feed into their reports. They also have to be comfortable with data modeling because of the tables that they'll be dealing with in the warehouse or in the reports. In some cases, they might have to use Python or R as well for more complicated exploratory data analysis. They'll also be using a lot of Tableau or Power BI, which are data visualization tools, because they're good for creating things like reports and dashboards to present their results. They'll also need to work with structured data because usually the data comes in a tabular format from, for example, a data warehouse. And then there are some cases where analysts still use things like Excel to create their dashboards and reports, but I do think that's changing. There are more and more newer generation of data analysts that are shifting over to tools like Tableau or Power BI. So now if we move on to data scientists, they need to know how to use SQL, data modeling, Python or R, Tableau or Power BI for the same reasons as data analysts. But instead of just structured data, they'll also be dealing with unstructured data, so things like text data as well. You'll also find a lot of data scientists usually do their work in Jupyter notebooks or any other type of notebook, and then they'll do something called scripting, which is just a way of automating tasks and processes. They also need to be familiar with unit testing because if they want to automate their tasks and processes, they need a way of seeing if their code is working as intended. They need to be comfortable with cloud computing, so AWS, Microsoft's Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and because most machines on the cloud are ran on Linux, they need to be comfortable with that as well. So the key difference here really is that data scientists are not just doing analysis, they're also doing automation and deployment, which means that there's a higher technical requirement. Overall, I hope you can see now that there's quite a big difference between data analysts and data scientists. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. If you want to know more about my experience of going from a data analyst to a data scientist, I have a video on that up here. I also have a video up here on why you should not become a data scientist. You can also follow me on Instagram, and if you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.